Welcome to the MamasteFit Podcast. In this Moments with MamasteFit episode, we're going to be talking all about painful sex, some common reasons that you may be experiencing it, and then also how you can resolve it. Welcome to Moments with MamasteFit. My name is Gina. I'm a perinatal fitness trainer and birth doula and the founder of MamasteFit. And I have Hayley Kava here, who is a pelvic floor physical therapist. She works in-house with us here at MamasteFit and is a frequent guest here on our podcast. And she's going to be helping us walk through some ways to address painful sex if you're having it in the postpartum. And so just to start the episode, I know that there's a lot of us that feel scared potentially of intimacy after birth. Like there was a lot that just happened down there. Like you also may just not be feeling it. Like I'm like exhausted all the time. I'm not interested in intimacy at this point in the postpartum time frame. Or you may be wanting to be more intimate with your partner as well. But it can still feel a little nerve-wracking. Like, oh my God, like there's a lot that just happened. And then if someone does have sex with their male partner and they find that it's painful, that can make it even worse. And so let's talk about some of the things that may be causing painful sex and ways that we can address it for ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Sex and painful sex is a complex issue. And I think it'll be cool to listen back to the episode all about sort of intimacy in that postpartum period, because that is such a huge piece of it. But from to add some other layers, perspectives into that, there are different hormonal things that are happening in this postpartum period. So when we are at the end of our pregnancy, our estrogen is super high, and then as soon as that baby's born, that estrogen just plummets, and it's the largest hormonal shift we face in our lifetime. And so when our estrogen levels are low, that's good. It allows prolactin to increase, which helps us produce breast milk. But it can create a bit of a Sahara Desert situation for our mucous membranes. So you may even notice you have like dry eyes and dry nasal passages.
Actually, yeah, I do.
And dry vulvas. You could actually have even like your labia minora can actually like shrink up and get like adhered to your outer labia. There's when those estrogen levels are low, it can create a lot of changes. And even our clitoris, right, which is our main like sexual pleasure organ in our body, it can actually even like get smaller in that postpartum period because the estrogen levels are lower, and then the tissue around it can be like tight and have tension because of estrogen being low. And so when we are trying to have penetrative intercourse, we're trying to have sex, if things are dry, we're not creating the normal like natural lubrication we maybe had typically been creating, that friction create irritation, and then our muscles are like, what the heck? And then our muscles will kind of tighten up, and then it's just not really an enjoyable experience because our clitoris and those tissues require good blood flow and require our pelvic floor muscles to move in order to help maintain that blood flow. If that's not happening, again, it's not only not going to be a pleasurable experience, it very well could be a painful experience.
So if everything's really dry, what are some things that somebody can use to help with lubrication? Like, are there certain lubes that you recommend over others? Like, are there some that people should avoid?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say it's in the US, it's a prescription, but topical vaginal estrogen can be amazing for this time period. You can use that externally on tissues. You can use that internally if you're having dryness. It can help with healing. So if you haven't, had a tear or you're dealing with some prolonged healing from birth, the estrogen is just really pretty magical for that. We have some pretty good safety studies on that for postpartum people as well. And so if that's something that you're comfortable with, that's sort of the I don't know, I don't want to say gold standard, but like I'd say that's like peak. Other topical moisturizers, or like vulvar moisturizers, can also be awesome. I really like a company called V Magic has a vulvar
I actually just
balm.
got their balm.
They have one that's called like lipstick.
Yeah.
It comes in like a tube that looks like a chapstick, but it's a little bit bigger, which can be great if you're like, even just having like chafing through the day, like because things are dry or like irritated. That can really help kind of protect those tissues. If you think about like if you had a sunburn on your shoulders and you didn't know it, but like you're kind of holding your muscles tight because the sunburn kind of hurts.
Mm-hmm.
When someone then like touches your muscles, it's like really hurts, right? Kind of same thing can happen to our like vulva, is that if that tissue is really irritated, the muscles underneath it are like, my tissue's kind of irritated. Now we're trying to play with these tissues because we're trying to have sex with these tissues. It's like all those muscles are like, nah, no thanks. But if we're able to like calm that skin irritation down, then that can kind of help. There's different there's all sorts of different companies. We have to sometimes be careful with these different companies because the marketing on some of these products can be a little iffy too when they're telling you about how things need to smell or how things need to taste. It's supposed to smell and taste like a vulva. And so looking at ingredients and that we don't want any like fragrances, we don't want any of that, which is why I like that V Magic company.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're a good company. I also like Good Clean Love's moisturizers. And there's different things like you can use like hyaluronic acid, which can also, just help with that general tissue moisture if you're having problems with that. So you can use it for your face and also for your vulva.
Oh, nice. I like it.
So, and then for actual sex, I think a lot of people, that's like a big shift for them, is that maybe before having kids, they never had an issue with lubrication. And so it can be a little bit, maybe embarrassing to have this sort of lube conversation if that was never a conversation that came up before. But it's just a all around good choice.
Yeah.
Right. And so again, we want to be conscious of the ingredients of the lubricants that we're using. There are generally 3 types of lube: water-based lubricant, silicone-based lubricant, and oil-based lubricant. If you are postpartum, my general recommendation is usually like a silicone-based lube. It tends to last a little bit longer and also kind of offers a little bit of like moisturizing effect in itself. Uber Lube is the brand I typically recommend there. For water-based lubricants, there's lots of different things. I can send you. I have like a little document that's like ingredients to avoid.
Yeah, we'll include it in the show notes for anybody that's listening.
Yeah. The pH of our vulva is quite low, so it's an acidic environment. So we want that lubricant to be quite acidic also. And then there's just different metrics on different lubricants that we want to just be aware of when we're using that. But don't be afraid of lube.
Yeah.
Just use it.
For me personally, like with 4 kids, I just don't have like a ton of time for like endless foreplay to like really get things going. Like it's like hey, we got 5 minutes,
right.
Like let's go. And if things are already dry, we'll just like lube it up. Like so that's something for me personally. I don't know if I don't think there's such thing as TMI on this podcast, but like, I don't have time to do like 20 minutes of floor play to get like all my own like moisturizing going on. And I'm like, just throw it on. Let's do it.
Absolutely. And then I think it's just, there's no lose. It's all win when we have a good lube. I generally do not recommend coconut oil. And that's controversial because I think a lot of people are like, oh, it's natural. It's like, it's got all these good antibacterial, antifungal properties. One, it's going to make a big mess. It's going to like, depending on the color of your sheets, like just stain them. And although it does have like antibacterial, microbial effects, it's going to stay on your skin. And so when you're done, if you're not immediately taking a shower and washing that oil off your skin, it's actually then like a breeding ground for more bacteria afterwards. So I generally tell people to avoid coconut oil, even though if someone feels dry, they're like, oh, this coconut oil is going to be moisturizing. The pH and the like other properties of that, I don't typically recommend. Caveat is Coconou is a brand, a lube brand, and they have an oil-based product that is better if you are committed to using oil-based lubricant.
So let's talk about like positioning. So if similar to like some of our other podcasts, we talk about different positions can really impact how well your pelvic floor can release or how well it can contract. Let's talk about different like positions that someone could consider if they are having pain with penetrative sex. So like for me, like being in like, to be graphic, like being in like doggy style sometimes is like a little bit more painful. Like with like deep penetration. I've had friends that find like deep penetration can be more painful for them, especially if they have had a C-section. So what are some like positional things that somebody can do if they are experiencing pain, and why do they sometimes feel pain in different positions?
Yeah, so this is where some of the things that maybe you've learned through birth education can come in handy. Okay. So when we are in the pushing phase, right, we're looking for that anterior outlet, the front part of that pelvic floor, to be in its most open position so that a baby can come out. But we can use similar thought processes for sex as well. Right. So if we are in a really wide knee position with our back really extended, it's taking the front part of that pelvic floor, bringing in a little bit more like narrow. And so putting some of those muscles and sort of the bottom of the vagina on tension. Right. It's why like I think you've talked about this before. It's like a deep squat position isn't always our best like giving birth position, because it's putting that tissue.
It's a lot of tension.
Yeah. So let's use doggy for the example. Is instead of going knees super wide and ankles like knees out, like wide, archy back, we come into a slightly more narrow. We could come into an ankles out position, and then playing with how much arch we have in our low back. So maybe trying to find a slightly more neutral spine position. We'll often take the bottom part of that like vaginal opening off tension. And then we'll also take the like deeper layers of our pelvic floor off a little bit of tension, and then allow things to hopefully feel a little bit less painful. We can also use our inner thigh muscles. So our adductor muscles, when they can turn on, right? So say we are going to turn our ankles out, bring our knees in a little bit, and sort of unarch our back. We can use activation of our inner thigh muscles to actually help increase blood flow to our like clitoral structures. So the adductors connect directly into the anterior pelvic floor muscles, the superficial ones that our clitoris is embedded in. So you can have this dual benefit of not only now we're taking off that tension, but we're improving our own like sensation and enjoyment of that position as well. So worth experimenting.
Are there any like I've heard of like the wedge, like I think we've had some friends that are like the wedge is life-changing. Is that like a helpful tool for some, like how does that help?
Yeah, so essentially you can use the wedge in so many different ways, but essentially the wedge supports letting go of that low back. So if you're on your back and you have that wedge, like the thicker part of the wedge under your butt, it's going to allow your lower back to relax and then help optimally position your pelvis so that then the like geometry is allowing for more contact of like your erogenous zone, so more of that anterior wall of the vagina with the penis. But when we relax our low back, right, it allows us to maybe access our lower abdominals a little bit more and access those inner thighs a little bit more. So in like a supine position, I'll usually tell people, hey, again, instead of having your legs go super, super wide and archy back, wedge helps your low back to relax. If your feet are on the ground, you can use your heel pressure on the ground to help sort of use hamstrings to like help bring that pelvis under. Or you could actually use your partner's body to help you engage your muscles.
Yeah.
So you could get heels on shoulders, get a little 90-90, right? So essentially you can use some of the exercises that are already in your programming, just get a little more creative with it, is that you can get a hamstring on, or you can get an inner thigh on, or you can get one on. And what that's going to do, again, help support elongation of the muscles of the back of the pelvic floor so that we can get better recruitment of the muscles of the front of the pelvic floor and improve sort of support of all the good things that we need for.
I need to make like an Amazon like wish list of pleasurable sex. It'll probably get banned. These are the tools that you should get.
I would say something else that can be really valuable is, depending on how much time you have, is like doing a little bit of pelvic floor muscle, like partner pelvic floor muscle release work beforehand. So things like pelvic wands can be really helpful, or other toys if that's helpful. If that's something you're comfortable with, in order to help us sort of get into a place where we're moving that pelvic floor well. Because when we're stressed out and we're like, on edge, we haven't slept well, we're going to be just holding those muscles tight. So to take a couple minutes, okay, I'm going to like relax my back. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to feel my pelvic floor move. Okay, now this experience is going to feel completely different. If we don't have time for that, then we're going to lube it up. And then we're going to optimize the positioning that we use to help make that be a better experience.
Absolutely. I found the pelvic one was a really helpful tool even during pregnancy. Because I had some, like, I guess you can call them trigger points within my pelvic floor, and being able to kind of like let those release was like just really helpful for my overall pelvic floor function, but then also to make things more pleasurable as well.
Yep. I've talked with clients before about also, I call it like partner biofeedback a little bit. So if something's painful, like you hit a painful spot, is to then just sometimes I like get a little curious about that and just say, okay, pause, like hold on for a second, and then take a few breaths and see, can I take a few breaths here and like relax around what was maybe hurting, and then carry on and see what happens, because sex shouldn't be painful unless you want it to be. Right? Yeah. And so sometimes that immediate feedback of like, that thing was painful, then what our body wants to do is really avoid that thing. And so now we're trying to avoid it. We're tightening our body. We're positioning our body in a weird way, versus going, I felt some of that pain. Maybe that's just like a muscle that's holding on tight. I'm not going to panic. I'm going to just breathe a little bit, see if I can let that go, and then see if we can kind of carry on with that.
Sounds like a key thing is also being able to freely communicate with your partner, which is like a whole nother layer to the conversation. So if you're listening to this episode and you're like, well, what about the mindset and the relationship aspect of it? We did just release a podcast episode with a therapist all about intimacy after giving birth and in the postpartum. So if you want to dive deeper into that aspect of the conversation, definitely listen to that full podcast episode that we'll link in the notes below. But definitely communicating with your partner on, hey, I feel nervous about this. This kind of hurts. Let me adjust a little bit, or this feels good, I think is a key thing with like really everything that we are moving through in our lives, but especially with intimacy. Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think I'll usually tell clients, I'll say, especially my clients who are dealing with painful sex, is that we sometimes will then go, okay, well, this is our pre-sex warm-up. And we need to do these together, like with your partner. And they may not be exercises that involve sort of the vulva at all, but they're breathing exercises or they're repositioning exercises. And I encourage people to do them together with their partner because, if your partner takes a long time to like poop, right, and that's annoying to you, that's going to impact your intimacy.
Yeah.
So if they're doing them as well, that maybe we optimize their pelvic floor function and then everybody's happier. But
there's a misconception that men do not have pelvic floors. They do.
Yeah,
they do have pelvic floors.
And you never know, like if they're doing these activities, it may also help their performance. And so but I think that helps bring in the partner to the process. I think depending, again, what's going on, whether it's that we need maybe a pelvic one to help address some scar tissue or dilators to address like significant tension. Again, starting to introduce the partner into that process is really, really helpful. And then again, more partner biofeedback, whether it's even if it's not a pain issue, is again, just taking this moment of pause and saying, hey, I'm going to see, can I like contract and relax my pelvic floor? Can you feel that?
Yeah.
Is to get a little bit of that immediate feedback. And so how you adjust your position. So if you have heels on shoulders and you're trying to get your hamstrings to engage a little bit, or you're using the wedge to help relax your low back, does that change how much you can feel your muscles contract and relax? And does that change the sensation that you have there as well? So that's something else that I sometimes will have people kind of experiment with.
Well, thank you so much, Hayley, for coming on the podcast to share your tips on addressing painful sex, because intimacy should feel good, or shouldn't hurt unless you want it to. And so if you're experiencing painful sex after giving birth, definitely recommend working with a pelvic floor physical therapist if it's available to you. Find some good lube. We'll link Hayley's recommendations down in the show notes below. And then also explore positioning and lots of communication with your partner. So hope this episode was helpful for you. It's one of those topics that you may feel uncomfortable talking about with your provider or with other folks, because intimacy sometimes feels a little bit more taboo for us. And so that's why we do podcast episodes like this, so that you can live a more comfortable life and not be afraid of what your body is doing. So thanks so much for being here, Hayley.
Yeah, happy to be here.